Hello, podcast lovers. Thank you so much for tuning back in. I'm Žana, and today I have the absolute pleasure to not only have a really good friend of mine on here that has agreed to share some truth about her own life, but I'm also going to share, and I hope this conversation is going to be something that whoever can get maybe some healing out of this. This is obviously the goal with this entire podcast. So, my friend Ayana was so nice to agree to come here today and to share a little bit. And I think today we wanted to dive into a few little things that kind of like dog on onto some things, but we want to start off with the overall idea of talking about patterns in our own life and how our upbringing possibly or where we come from and whoever our caregivers were, how they kind of like implemented certain ideas and certain behaviors by either showing us how they behaved or by telling us how we should behave. And I think that's kind of like the overall umbrella we want to touch base on. So Ayana, I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you so much. You are my premier number two. You're my guest number two.
So happy.
And
Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for your safe space. I love it.
Thank you. So, let's kind of like dive in. I know privately we shared a lot of stories, which we connected on a whole lot in our friendship.
Yeah.
But why don't you kind of like dive in a little bit and tell me or tell whoever is listening to how do you feel about when we enter relationships in our life, which could be romantically, it could be platonically, it could be in a friendship at our workspace or wherever we kind of like foster relationships.
Mm.
How do you see that from your own life perspective? What kind of effect that that had on you and the relationships that you kind of like had around you? And it could be any kind of relationship from today to going back 10 years ago. So wherever, however you want to
Yeah.
just dive in.
That's a great starting point. And thank you. Um, well, I've had many relationships, going all the way back to high school, and
Mhm.
now that I am 32, and also in therapy and doing the work on self and having just realizing certain things about myself that I like, and then there are certain things that I don't like. My background, I want to say that I came from a two-parent household. My mom and my dad married, and they're still married. And just like any relationship, they've had their ups and downs. But one thing is they didn't have, me or my brother see it, or they put us in the middle of it. And so I do appreciate that. I rarely remember any um, arguing or any like yelling or any kind of chaos. As a child, of course, it was disagreements, and we are like, oh, what's happening. But of course, they took that away from us. They handled that within themselves. But I believe, well, coming from my dad being going off to work, my mom, she worked within our home and she took care of me and my brother. A lot of the times, mom was the person that we had to call on the majority of the time. And I think that relationship, me and my mom, we had a strong relationship. And then through, I want to say, high school is when it kind of got rocky.
Mhm.
And, unfortunately, during that time, speeding past a little bit of high school or into the ending of high school, I lost my virginity, just because I was a young girl trying to get it figured out and boys
Right.
in my ear and things like that, right? So around 17, 18, lost my virginity. And from there, I kind of was just yearning for my mom to be able to hear me and to see me and not to see me as a little child anymore, but also to be this young woman, right? And
Right.
I did experience, losing my virginity, and she was so upset, and of course that kind of is something that we're in a weird way brought us closer where we were able to actually have better communication. And that kind of led to the relationships after, shortly after that I did have. And not all of my relationships were um the worst. I know a lot of them were lessons, and I'm not done, with the lessons, I'm sure. But there was some trauma within some of my relationships moving forward in my now I'm 32, so my 20s getting older, and I had my child. He's 6 now, and so that was one of my really big um
Milestones
yeah,
in a sense.
milestones, and just learning more about, myself and connecting with someone,
Right.
have a child.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. I was wondering when you just said that you were yearning for your mom to give you more attention and to just understand that you are transitioning in your own self from, adolescent to grown up.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that had any effect on you picking specific type of people to be in a relationship with, just to get that sort of attention that wasn't given at home. Because I feel like sometimes what really happens is even when you come from a safe household, as they say safe, where both parents are at home. I, for instance, really think that even then there is so many things that are happening that you then in your grown-up life, or when you then really live life with somebody, latest when you decide to have a child or you're living life with somebody by cohabitating, there's a lot of things that then come out, and I feel like, or, I'm so interested in knowing from you, does the idea of her not giving you that attention that you were seeking, was that something that you then took outside trying to get that from somebody, and then if you didn't get it, because obviously we can only get from the same person the same attention. You cannot get from, for instance, if you want it from your mom, you can't get it from the neighbor, you cannot get it from the teacher, it's that type of attention from that specific person to you is obviously only a unique person.
Oh yeah.
And so, I find so often that when we come from these safe homes, because I grew up in a household too where both of my parents were married until my dad died, and yet there was many things now looking back that I would not want to do in my own household with my son, for instance, right? And not because it was so awful and so bad, but still the things that I picked up there, I today choose not to do that for myself, because I find today, if I'm really looking at it, and now that we have all these tools like therapy, and we're using the tools too, because I feel like back in the days that this was unheard of for people to just openly admit, hey, look, I have an emotional problem, I have a mental problem even, or I have a some kind of problem internally that is causing
Mhm.
certain problems within my own life and with the relationship that I have. But now that we're so open about receiving this kind of help, um, it's still the work still needs to be done, is what I'm trying to say. And so in that whole transition, I'm wondering, how did you see that for you? Do you, when you now look back, were you like, okay, I should have never chosen this person because I was like not evolved enough, or I didn't have the tools that my therapist today had suggested to me, or like what was really that transitional phase where you're like, what, if that would have been in place,
Yeah.
maybe this could have been avoided, type of thing.
Yeah, honestly, you are correct in how you are pretty much, explaining it. But I do want to go back. It wasn't just my mom as well, it was my father too. So,
Right.
of course, being in a two-parent household, they're aligned like this, So if one person says something, the other person stands behind that. And so it's like
Mhm.
no one's really hearing you, and I don't want to, badmouth my parents because that's not what I'm here to do, but I'm also just here to explain my experience
Right. Like
and
how you
then
took it and how it entered your world.
oh
Right.
yeah. And my dad, he was military, he's from the Marines. So his way of thinking is so strict, and so critique and it's very, very I wasn't able to be on the phone with boys until, 18 or something, so it was a
Yeah.
lot of things and I was the only girl. And then my brother's 3 years under me. So but and I was their first child. So that was a lot in itself. And of course, as we are parents now, there's no one way or completely right way to do it, right? And
Right.
so giving them more grace as I am parenting as well, understanding that is one thing. But yeah, having both parents in the household was great. Um, Definitely I do want to give that to my son at some point. Um, but of course it has to be in the right manner, right? And what manner of as far as being aligned with each other and my spouse. But um going back to my childhood and just having somewhere around 18, just being a young woman or being a young girl turning into a young woman. I definitely did yearn to be heard, and to be seen by my parents and not to be like, you know, um, and put in this little box and no, you can't go nowhere. No, you can't do anything. And that's kind of what I was kind of put into this box and just for safekeeping. And I do understand a portion of that. I'm so sorry. My neighbor's playing music. Can you hear that?
Mhm.
No? Okay. But yes, so for that is to be concerned, I just kind of felt like um I definitely wanted to my mom and my dad to hear me out and for me to just feel seen. So of course me losing my virginity back then, I wasn't ready. I did pick someone that did not was not the best experience, right? And with that being said, that kind of left me naive to a lot of things because of course, I shared it with my mom, but I didn't dare share it with my father. And I
Right.
begged her not to share it with my dad until I felt comfortable. And that was one way she said, okay, I'll, give you your wishes. And so I shared it with my dad much, much later. But just having that experience and going through the things that from going to parties, my parents were just like, no, nope, it's not safe. And my dad would go around the area to see if it was something that he would like, if it's too many boys outside, if it's so many things going on. Nope. If I'm on the phone with a boy, that was back in the day when you can pick up the other phone in another room and hear the other conversation. So get
Yeah, I
off the
remember that.
phone with, who is
Yeah.
that. And so
Hmm.
a lot of those things, and I laugh now because it's just, I'm
Yeah.
older now and I understand a little more. But that was something that, I felt that conversations and communication between me and my parents could have been stronger. And I
Hmm.
feel that the reason why I was so naive within relationships from me losing my virginity and then moving forward past that, um, like I said, it wasn't the worst picks, but it could have been better. But I just feel like I didn't have the right tools. And I did see it within my home. My dad showed me the most love, the most, he's first man I ever loved. But it still wasn't a conversation that I was able to have with him about other men.
Hmm.
It was
Mhm.
something.
Do you feel like that if the approach of your dad would have been a little bit more like, hey, look, like it's still going to be a no, because first of all, you live, this is how it sounds to me. First of all, you live in our home and our rules matter the most here, regardless if you like it or not, you know? But if the approach would have been additionally to that, him explaining to you why he is so afraid of keeping you away from those dangers, which fundamentally is really what he tried to do, right? Like he was trying
Yeah.
to protect you. But do you think the approach of him, if he would have just sat down with you and explained to you, like, look, this is the reason why I don't like this to happen, because this could be possibly the consequence. Because I remember in my household, there were similar examples that you just said, for instance, with, talking to boys, wearing makeup, like all of that was an absolute no in my household too for a very, very, very long time. But for me personally, it would have helped me if my dad would have just literally explained to me the no part. Like he
Yeah.
always just told me no is
No,
no, and you don't need to
and don't
understand why I'm saying
question.
no. And luckily, my mom was exactly the opposite. She then would explain to me why he would say no. So for me to somewhat have an understanding of what is really happening. But for the longest, I felt like I built resentment in that aspect towards him. And then I also tried to be rebellious by the time I could really do things on my own, regardless if it's were under the house rules. Because I remember when I was still living at home, I was allowed to go out one weekend a month, one weekend, but I could be out all night. Right. But it would be just one weekend a month. And I would let so crazy loose that weekend. And so I'm wondering if that had some impact on you too, where that part of the first love, as you called it, if it would have been a little bit more like, more in this vulnerability aspect of like, look, I love you and I show you that I love you. I don't know how love was displayed in your home, but either verbally or physically or both maybe, but this is really what I'm trying to do, and this is the reason why I'm so strict on you. Do you think it would have made a difference by you then later picking the relationships that you had? And again, not necessarily with just men, but also with friendships,
Oh,
because fundamentally we don't just crave attention from the opposite sex if we are attracted to that opposite sex, but we are also craving attention from just humans,
oh,
right? Like just being close to them, or like laughing with them, or sharing, or like
oh yeah.
so.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, for sure. Um my dad, he was just very, very like no. And I love that about your how the balance between your mom and your dad, and how your dad was like, no, and no means no. And your mom's like,
Right.
hey, yeah, it's no, but this is the reason why. Um,
Yeah.
and my mom didn't do that too much for me. It was more so my dad said no, and she stood behind that no, or if my mom said no, my dad stood behind that no. It was really not
They're very
explained.
submissive to each other. Yeah, is that fair
Yeah,
to say? Very, very,
yes.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
it was like, you know, there was no like going to one and like, maybe you can,
Right.
it'll be easier with this one or easier with that one. It was just very
Yeah.
much no across the board. And
Yeah.
so I would like, we had a calendar on our refrigerator. And if there was any of my friends' birthdays coming up, and I know like, oh, it might be her brother's there or whatever, right? I would write it on the calendar like weeks before, and hey, this is my friend, the location, the parent's number, the parent's name.
Right.
I would try to get them to talk on the phone at least. It was this big thing, every single time if there was anything to do, and um, I do want to explain that where I did or where I resided then wasn't the safest, right? And I understand that as well was a part of why my parents were so strict. With
Hmm.
and I do thank them for it, because I do have some friends that are not unfortunately here with us anymore, and that has passed away
Right.
just because, maybe. their parents weren't so strict, and so that is something where I do give grace to my parents with that, and I do understand, you know.
And ultimately, personally, as just hearing the story, what I would like to add as respect to your parents is the fact that they kind of, in my opinion, really very much displayed to you that when you are a unit, when you are deciding to live life with somebody as husband and wife, I feel like that they're displaying this whole, we're not going to let our kids manipulate us because we're the front, like we're the unit. This is how it started. It started with me and with him, and like you guys are cute
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever, and we love you, but sorry, like if I'm already saying no, don't even ask me if your mom
Yeah.
said this, if your dad
Yeah.
said that.
Get
I
it?
feel like
Yeah.
that part is really
Mm.
good for a child to understand that
Mm.
there are boundaries and there are rules.
Oh yeah.
And there's really like, you have to respect
Oh
the,
yeah.
in a sense, the people that take care of you, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
but I also feel like that part of in being put in this position where you just simply this whole thing of like not really understanding what the rules are or why they are the way they are. I feel like if this would have just been broken in transparent conversations down, I personally do feel like that so much trauma could have been avoided because you were not aware. Fundamentally, your dad was a man. He had
Yeah.
probably the thinking when he was young from the same way like those boys that he was
Oh
trying to keep you
yeah.
away from,
Oh yeah.
you
And
know?
see, and that's
And
you're right on the money with that, because a lot of times, even with moving forward from like relationships where my dad met, some of the guys that I was talking to, dating. But a lot of times my dad didn't want to meet, them. And so he would say, "Oh, I'm going to play basketball." I'm like, "Oh, dad, this person's coming over for dinner. I thought you were going to be here." He would just avoid, and I laugh at it now, but then I was like, I really like this person, and I want to see what you have to say, but my
right.
dad, he's just different. And so a lot of that was, and not saying he hasn't met any of my boyfriends, but some of them that have come across, he's just like, telling me, I'm just waiting for that right person that you're gonna come. I'm waiting for that person. And even when my son's dad, showed up, he's like, and we were engaged, he's like, yeah, I was still waiting for that person, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
we never had a conversation about any of the guys besides one that he just really did not like. Never had a conversation about the guys that he felt that, what was wrong with them, what do you see that I
Yeah.
don't see,
Yeah.
and
It almost sounds like that it was an absolute taboo taboo thing to speak at home, almost like let's not even ever talk about sex at home ever, because it's such a weird thing to talk to your parents already about. But I feel like when we go back to the first beginning of the point of like, we're would would have been the choices that we made fundamentally would they be different,
right.
right? If we would have had those transparent conversations with our parents, if we would have had that really our dad saying to a young female, his daughter, like, look,
This is what he's
this
wanting.
is really what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Because with my dad, for instance, I had one time a conversation like that about many things where he used to say no when he was maybe 3 months prior to his death. And I felt like that was the only very time when he was so open and vulnerable and really wanting to share everything. And I had asked him so many questions that day because he told me so many times no, and I didn't understand even years later. So I asked him, and that's when he really explained to me. And I felt it was so good for me because it almost was kind of like closure
Mhm.
conversation, and
It's
part
almost
of
like you
healing.
think that they trust you, right? Like you like
Mhm.
didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But But yeah, I mean, I feel like relationships in general is really something that we learn about every day. Because I feel like, when we have certain friendships or when we have specific romantic relationships, I almost feel like that they all are really coming into our life for a specific purpose, and even like the not worst picks but but not so good ones, or even the worst picks or whatever, like even that part, I feel like that it really all happens for a reason, to either teach you something or you need to learn something from them, because they're being your teacher in this current lifetime that we're in. And for me, when I look back, I mean, there were times where I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Like I didn't even understand my own choice. But then when years went by and I remembered certain situation, specific names would pop in my head, and I'm like, wow, now I'm connecting the dots. I'm like, this was the person that taught me way back then when I didn't even recognize that this is a lesson. When some people say something to you and you hear it, but you move on from it right away. And then years later, you're like, wait, what? Remember, this is what they told me one time. And you only remember that one sentence or that one word or that one phrase or whatever. And now all of a sudden it makes sense, right? And
Oh,
so, yeah, it's kind of crazy.
yeah, no, for sure. Like you said, I'm like, I have some of my family that have passed on now, and my grandma, we were very, very close. One of my aunts were very, very close, and certain things from what they've said to me, like either, a saying or, oh, this and that. And so it still stays with me, no
Right.
matter, depending on what is going on in life, I can apply it, and it's like, oh, but it took some more life experience from me, because they might have told me this when I was younger, and I'm just
Hmm.
they mean, but living more life and more life experience, I'm like, oh, that's what she meant, And
Hmm.
but yeah, no, for sure.
I feel like those are also really like the times when you have conversations like this, and if you are still blessed enough for those specific people still to be in your life, to just then sometimes pick up the phone and be like, hey, actually, you want to go for a coffee, or like, how are you? Like I wish I could do that with my aunts, but almost every aunt of mine is already not here anymore. I have so little family left on this planet, actually. But so, like this might be a good way also of just being encouraging to whoever still has family member that had any kind of impact on them, regardless of good or bad, because even the bad things sometimes, right? Just for your own closure, for your own healing, I think it's a good thing to go and have a conversation and really say, like, hey, look, I don't understand why this had happened. Like this had hurt me, or this caused this and this trauma in my life that I'm still working on today in my being grown uphood or whatever. And I would like you to explain, or like, because when we're children or when we're young, we're so timid sometimes to really give a word back or say something back, depending again how you were brought up. And I feel like now that you're grown up, you can really be like, you know what,
Which
I'm gonna say in a calm, respectful, firm way, but I'm going to speak exactly what I have to say.
Mhm.
And so, but even that part, I feel like takes practice and takes maturity and takes some trauma too, for you to really own that. Like I'm not that 12-year-old girl anymore. I can now speak, like,
Um,
but I feel like that sometimes has a big impact too on us, unintentionally or unconsciously even.
Oh yeah, you can explain your feelings a lot more now. That 12-year-old, 11-year-old girl, or however age
Right.
you've been. Now it's like I can formulate the words in my emotions and what I felt then, because I still feel it
Right.
now, right? It's so set with me all this
Right.
time, and it still affected me all these times. So definitely, I there is one aunt, great aunt that we no longer speak, right? And she kind of we don't speak, none of the family really speaks to her, but she
Hmm.
rubbed kind of all the family wrong in different ways, right? And in different experiences. And so we all kind of collectively just said, and some,
Mhm.
excuse me, but to HELL with you, and
Right.
um I don't want time to go on and, unfortunately things happen and, life is short that I don't have a conversation with her, and express, myself. And I do in this conversation here, I will be the bigger person and I will reach out to her. And if I'm lucky enough that she's wants to speak to me, then hopefully at this age 32 that we'll be able to communicate.
Mhm.
This that is probably the only person that I can think in my head that
Yeah,
I've ever like held
a
a
grudge.
type of grudge for. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so I have respect for you that you say that simply because we never know what happens in each life or why we choose or why specific people choose to really not communicate at all anymore to another being, right? But fundamentally, I always feel like that hurt people hurt people.
Mm.
And if we simply, as in a sense, believers or believing in something higher than ourselves, I mean, for me in my life, it's obviously my divine creator, it's God. But even if that's not the case, I still feel like, we never really know what had happened in their life for them to even act this way, because we don't know exactly what happened in their childhood because it's maybe too embarrassing or too painful for this person to share. So they create this facade, right? They create this mask and
Mhm.
this shell where obviously I'm not showing how broken I am inside because I can't afford to show, or I don't want to because it's going to make me look a certain way. But I feel like when we always keep those kind of things really in the back of our mind, and hey, listen, and I'm not saying if somebody really does you something wrong or to your child or really does something that is in a sense unacceptable or unforgettable, forgivable, absolutely, there's not, but
Yeah.
I feel like there's levels to things,
Oh,
right? And but even I feel like, I've one time met this person in my life and she was sexually abused by a few people or in her circle, and yet she found the strength inside of her because she was so rooted in her and in her God, and she was so deeply connected, and she healed so tremendously that she literally went there to the abusers themselves and had a face-to-face conversation and telling them, look, I will never accept what you've done, but I am letting it go and I am forgiving you, because whoever does something is obviously not in the right mind at that moment, because again, who knows what happened to them? We don't know what went on in their mind, what triggered them. And it's not necessarily an excuse, but I feel like for our own healing aspect of literally just letting go and being grateful that today we are healthy, we
yeah.
have two hands, we can see, we can smell, we can taste, our child is healthy. And if that alone we have, who cares in a sense? Like, why are we holding on to something that we don't even know? And most of the time, it really didn't even had anything to do with us, even though it was done to us, but it had nothing to do with us. It
Oh,
had it had something to do with that person's inner turmoil, that
yeah.
they were incapable and unwilling to really do work on self.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Mhm. But
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good.
this was yeah, healing, man, conversations, just transparency. I feel like just transparent conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
just really having the courage of really sitting down there with whoever and just really saying, hey, look, this is literally where I stand. This is not no attack. This is not no ultimatum. This is nothing like that. This is simply me expressing in a calm,
Yeah.
respectful, but yet firm,
Right.
way in our standpoint of view with our own personal boundaries that we're absolutely allowed to have,
Oh,
and
yeah.
just expressing like if this is something I'm not okay with anymore, and if this were not to change, then my consequence would be simply wishing you well, but
Yeah.
not choosing to be involved with you.
Yeah. And like you said, just not holding any grudges, not being being an adult and rooting in your being and knowing God and knowing that, listen, not everyone is um even like I said, for example, me having the conversation, me reaching out to my great aunt, I have to be in the know that maybe she's just not going to want to have that conversation with me. And I
Right.
understand that and be willing to accept that and give her the best blessing and continue on with my life. But if we do have that, get a chance to have that conversation, that would be great too, because there is a lot of pain behind um, our relationship as aunt and niece, and a lot of things that have not been explained, and both sides, and so,
Right.
but like you said, her upbringing, I'm pretty sure that has a lot to do with it, of why he has been at odds with almost every person in our family, and
Absolutely. I
it
mean, obviously it has something to do with her own self,
yeah,
or her approach, or her point of view. But I also want to add that I'm pretty sure that not only everybody that got hurt by her, but she probably is also hurting by the fact that nobody wants to speak to her, because I cannot imagine that that has no effect on a person. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like I cannot not imagine that even if she's the wrongdoer in a sense, that it doesn't hurt her that she was now so outcast by everybody and told or and shown by actions like, we don't speak to you, we don't call you, we don't invite you to no birthday parties or to no graduations or whatever family stuff is happening. And I'm pretty sure that she's also hurt by that fact, right? But
yeah,
again, I feel like if we are allowing ourselves to just really, either like you said, be the bigger person and making that first step, and either accepting, hey, this could go totally left too, this person could just cuss me out, or ask me, why the heck are you
Are-
here, what do you want, like, no, no, I mean, we have to be ready for any kind of reaction. But it could also go exactly the other way, right? Where now it's like, she grew and she maybe found her own rootedness in something higher than herself and got, more mature with the years and whatever. And then it might be just, what, I should have not done that, and I'm sorry, right? Like maybe if you cannot forgive me, or because it's something, it's unforgettable, it's one thing, but just let her say she's sorry, you know? And sometimes I feel like we don't give each other those opportunities,
right.
either to be heard, like
Mm.
you said, right? Or to speak.
Yeah.
And
Give grace.
so, yeah.
We all need it, we all need grace. No one's
Right.
perfect, and you know,
Right.
I'm pretty sure, and that's what's so it's not funny, but going back to the relationships, I want to say last year or sometime, I ended up sitting down and having dinner and a coffee with a few of the exes from my past because of the reason why we ended, and just now we're older and it's a different um we experienced it, we not hated each other, but just disliked each other
Right.
so that we could not communicate, right? And we could not
Mhm.
see each other face to face. But actually,
Right.
in that moment, going back to that time, saying, this is, I had a ex that, he lost his brother, around the time that we, to gun violence, and around the time that he did, I was fearful that he was going down the wrong path in life, and it scared me. And so with me being scared, I tend to just run. I tend to move out the way, and so that's kind of what I did. for the most part, along with, some allegations of cheating and stuff like that. But we were able to have a sit down conversation, and I apologize. I said I couldn't imagine, because I do have a brother myself, and
Oh, you
I,
felt in that moment, yeah.
being in your shoes. And then
Right,
I didn't imagine, I didn't take the time out to, I wasn't mature enough, I didn't live enough life to understand how you could have felt, then. And I should
yeah,
have been a better, person for
yeah,
you. I could have been that. And I'm sorry. I'm deeply
yeah,
sorry. We did have that conversation. And honestly, it was freeing of both of us. Now we're being able to at least say hello through social media,
right,
just little
right,
conversations here and there. And
yeah,
not like a big thing where it's like, oh, we just don't talk, because a lot of
right,
people have exes, right? And there is a time where you are like, I just can't talk to this person. This person has done so much to me. But once you go through enough healing within yourself, enough awareness of, because it takes two, right? Um, you get over certain things, and you're able to give grace to the
right,
overall relationship, and
right.
admit, like, and then there's a time where you can go back and you can have a conversation. You don't have to be best friends, but having
Right.
that
It's that respect level of like we shared something, whatever that
for a
was, or
long
we come
time,
from the same DNA, or we come from the same home, or we come from the
or being
whatever.
connected for a certain amount of time,
Right, right, right.
why,
And
right?
right. And I feel like that's exactly, like also just to round this whole topic up, but like, it's always good to not burn bridges. I feel like it's okay to choose to not walk on a specific bridge for a while, and that while could be anything. There's no timeline attached to that. It could be 5 minutes and it also could be 5 years, right? There's literally no time limit on that. But I feel like it really does show just the aspect of respect for human itself, to be then going back and be like, hey, look, I don't know if you're receptive to this or not, but here's just what I wanted to say, and I hope you can receive it. And if you can, great. And like you said, if we can maybe be just on social media, but if we cannot, then just know, thank you for being part of my journey in this lifetime. Like, thank you that we shared whatever that was that we shared, even if it's just a one-time coffee or whatever. And I feel like when we keep that in mind, and we have an attitude like that, I think it's a little bit easier to not be so mad when really somebody rubs you the wrong way or does you wrong. Like, of course you're allowed to live your feelings and to feel what you feel, but holding on to whatever had happened, it's fundamentally, it doesn't bring you any points. It doesn't bring that person anything. It's not that the person's like, yay, she's still mad at me. Like, nobody cares at one point, At one point, it's like everybody moves on. Like they say, the world keeps
It's going.
going around, nothing stops for anyone or anything. And, you know, but yeah, that's I think you said it so beautifully, and I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you for just seeing the bigger picture and just doing that, also what is best for you,
Yeah.
because that's what we hear, right? We here to honor ourselves, and we here to honor others. So, but it
Oh,
starts with us, right? If I don't honor me first, I don't understand how I can honor somebody else.
and loving yourself first and being in touch with yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. Healing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a
You're
great.
so welcome. Thank you so much for coming. This was such a pleasure. And, podcast lovers, like always, if there's anything you want to share, if you have anything on your heart, this mic, this video is always open. It doesn't have to be necessarily a video if you're too shy to show your beautiful face. It could be just an audio. But the mic is open, and come join me at any time. And I hope you like this. Ayana, I have respect for you. I love you.
Love you.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you, and I appreciate you, and I love you. Have a good one. Keep having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.